Welcome to OJ Health Radio. I'm your host, Ollie Matthews, a health coach, functional medicine healthcare provider, nutrition therapist, and elite personal trainer who has worked with clients all over the world, from high-achieving entrepreneurs, busy professionals, and world champion athletes. We're going to dive into the depths of health to find out how you will be able to reach your peak performance and truly become the revitalizer that you deserve to be. Covering topics around all things health, from the mind and body to lifestyle optimization and movement, along with getting elite business experts on to talk through your business health at the same time. We really do have all areas covered to help you succeed once and for all. No excuses necessary. It's time to become a revitalizer. Remember what we always say, your body is your business. And without a sustainable body, you haven't got a sustainable or scalable business. So get strapped in, get ready to take your body, your mindset, relationships, and business to the next level. Hey, and welcome. I'm going to be talking today deeper about the thyroid. And I've spoken about the thyroid hormone before. I've talked about thyroid function and all these different things and how stress impacts this, but I've not dived deep into it. And I'm going to do this today just so if you're one of these many people that I've had conversations with or that are getting frustrated because your medication isn't literally touching the sides when it comes to your thyroid function, this should help you. If you just bear with me, go through it step by step, we will get some of the issues looked at in a deeper way. Now, this is for entertainment purposes only. I have to say that for insurance purposes. If you do have these thyroid issues, you can contact a registered practitioner, licensed, insured practitioner, contact myself if you want to, and we can work at this on a more one-to-one scale. But so many people I see and speak to pretty much every single week are having problems with their thyroid function. And they go to the doctors and then they get put on T4 and it doesn't really make a difference. In some cases, actually makes things worse. And they've tried multiple things, and it's like they're literally banging their head against a brick wall when it comes to improving their thyroid. The doctors will potentially say there's nothing wrong with them. They've done a blood test and their TSH has come up totally fine, but they're still getting these issues. Things like they're having struggles with fat loss. They're chronically fatigued and have very low energy. Maybe they're constipated or they've got severe bouts of brain fog, some other hormonal issues, and have problems with sleep. Just some of the things that are on the list of issues when you have problems with your thyroid. Now, the key thing we have to look at here, it's not usually your thyroid that is the problem. It is usually getting deeper into your body and looking at your body from a top down, something before we get to the thyroid gland that is going on. Now, if we look what actually happens, we have a thing called your HPT axis. Now, I've spoken about adrenals with the HPA axis, your hypothalamus. So we have the hypothalamus, excuse my writing. Now, this will send a signal to your pituitary. Can't spell. These are glands within the brain. Now, from there, your pituitary will send a signal to the thyroid gland. Now, these are three key things that we have to look at when it comes to thyroid function. Now, what actually happens is your hypothalamus can see everything that's going on within the body. It can regulate temperature. It can tell stress. It can tell hormone balance. It can tell so many different things. Well, what happens when we want to release thyroid hormone and get our thyroid gland working, our hypothalamus has to send a signal to the pituitary, releasing a thing called TRH. This is thyroid releasing hormone. Now, that tells the pituitary we need to get the thyroid gland working. Now, your pituitary will then send a signal or release TSH, the thing that most doctors will test for at first, to the thyroid to say, we want to release some thyroid hormone. From there, we signal the thyroid gland. Now, as I said, the hypothalamus knows what's going on in the body with stress, but the pituitary can only see hormonally. It can't tell whether you're more stressed, whether you're less stressed, whether you're tired, whether you're hot, whether you're cold. So it will only know what's going on with the hypothalamus. And if there's other imbalances hormonally, we will then potentially get issues already with your TSH. Now, what happens here is that we release a thing called T4 and a thing called T3. Now, these are what we call free thyroid hormones. We have T4, which is inactive, and we have T3, which is active. I'm not really going very straight here. 93% of the thyroid hormone released is inactive, which means there's 7% which is active. Now, with these hormones being free, that means they can go and do their job straight away. But we don't want that. We want to make sure they can go around the body rather than just getting used by all these little bits of tissue around the thyroid gland, around the thyroid gland. Now, what we need to do that is we need to get that to the liver to do that, and to other places like your kidneys, your gut, because what happens here, if we don't get rid of this free, if we don't switch this from free to what we call bound, we're not going to be able to do that. So your liver will release something called TBG, thyroid binding globulin. That is basically what I would call an Uber for thyroid hormones. It's going to take the T4 and T3, and it's going to take them to the liver. Now, remember, this is primarily T4. 93% of that is T4. So once they're bound, they cannot be used. So this thyroid binding globulin will bind this T4, bind this T3, and it's in those Ubers. It can't get to the pavement. It can't get to the pedestrians or anything like that. It's in these Ubers until it gets to the liver, until it gets to the kidneys or anything like that. Now, what happens here is the liver will convert this T4 into T3 that we can actually use. That's what we want. And it does this if we look at how much actually gets produced. Around 60% of this, of your thyroid hormone, is converted from T4 to T3 in the liver. We also have around 20% in the gut. This is where left-handed becomes a bit of an issue, just like all through school when you're writing and then you get the side of your hand just filled with ink. We have 20% in the gut. Now, we know that if we don't have good liver function, this is going to be compromised. If we don't have good gut function, this is going to be compromised. So we know that already that there could be some issues here if we've got a healthy hypothalamus, a healthy pituitary, and a healthy thyroid gland. And a brain fart there. So we know that if they're healthy and this all works, so they get in their little cars, there's an Uber, and they go to the liver and they get converted, they get unbound and they become converted to T3, or we can use it. We know if that's fine there and we have an issue with our liver, there's going to be problems. If all that's fine and we have a problem with our kidneys, we're going to have problems. We have a problem with our gut, we're going to have problems. Now, one of the things that we find before any of this happens is that our brain function is stopping the hypothalamus getting the right signals. Now, one of the things that happens is that we need good brain function to send the right message to the hypothalamus. And it's based on a feedback loop. So if we're stressed, now in the adrenal video that I've done, the hypothalamus sends a signal to the pituitary, it sends a signal to the adrenal gland to release adrenaline, which then moves into cortisol, which sends a signal back. It's a feedback loop which sends more cortisol in. If we have stress in the body, we're going to get mixed messages, which means the thyroid releasing hormone is not going to be released as adequately as we want, or maybe too high, maybe too low. The pituitary could have issues, so it's not going to release enough TSH. So these things before the thyroid has an issue, or before we get to the thyroid gland, could well be an issue. Now, this is looking at neurological function. So what do we mean by that? We mean the way your neurons fire. We mean the way your stress is going on in your body. Now, I've had clients that have been through severe levels of trauma in their life. And with this severe trauma that they've been through, we have immune cells in the brain called glial cells. Now, these glial cells, when we go through this stress, they get switched on more and more over periods of time. And what they're responsible for is clearing out waste, basically clearing out dead neurons and wastes within the brain. And they get very good at doing this. The more active they go and the more stressed we are. Now, if you go through this severe bout of stress after you're already stressed, we risk priming those glial cells. And what actually happens with those glial cells is when they get primed, they cannot be switched off. And basically, we become very, very reactive to stress, very, very sensitive. So if we have problems within our brain and we have primed glial cells, we're going to react to inflammation more. You could literally overtrain and then you're bedridden for 3 days. You could have exposure to chemicals and you're bedridden, all these different things. And we can go into that in a different video. But if you've got primed glial cells, your brain is not going to be functioning as effectively. So we look at the hypothalamus, chances are that is not going to be already getting the messages we need to signal the pituitary, to signal the thyroid. Then the other thing we have to look at, I've done a video on toxin exposure. Now, toxins will also impact your brain, but some of the things they do in relation to your thyroid gland is that toxin exposure will decrease your pituitary's ability to make TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. Now, these toxins are things that we are exposed to every single day. We can't get away from toxins, but we can lower our exposure to them. Things like mold, things like chemicals when people are decorating, things like fire retardants in furniture, on carpets and things like that. Things like diesel fumes, things like when people are using chemicals and pesticides, herbicides when they're farming, things like deodorants, plastics, BPAs, all these different things that we're exposed to, some of the creams we put on our skin. There are so many different things that we're exposed to. So they decrease the pituitary's ability to make TSH. They also decrease the ability or the conversion for your T4 to convert to T3. Again, they also damage receptors. So even when the T3 has been produced and it gets sent to the cells, these receptors can't take that T3 up effectively. And they're also shown to increase our body's excretion of thyroid hormone. Basically, it gets rid of thyroid that we actually are able to effectively have. Now, what can happen as well is cortisol levels as well. So stress, not just toxin, cortisol levels have also been shown to slow down this conversion of T4 to T3. So why do we want to be looking more than the thyroid? Because stress, because toxins, because there's so much else going on. Not only with that cortisol slowing down the production, it also creates a thing called reverse T3, which your body cannot use. So it takes away some of that free T3, that T3, not 3T. We're not talking about Michael Jackson's nephews here. That T3 that we can use and makes reverse T3. Now, we can throw spanners into the works if there's autoimmune conditions going on, like Hashimoto's, other thyroid things that are going on, and we can look at TPOs and look at antibody tests. But honestly, when we look at the thyroid hormone, too many people go straight for this thyroid. And then they look at this, and it's the same with other things going on, hormonal things, when people have problems with testosterone or estrogen, or they have problems elsewhere. We look directly at the outcome, not the input. We look at the output. We look at the symptom rather than what is actually firing this up. Now, how do we actually improve this? Well, we have to look on a case-to-case basis. So if you do really want some individualized help with this, drop me a message. You can go to ojayhealth.com. There's a contact section there. You can drop me a message, or you can comment on the video and we can get into a direct message and we can chat there, and we can get onto a call and have a chat through, see what we can do. But honestly, we need to look at what is stressing you out. I've seen so many people, and myself being a recovering bodybuilder, I really damaged things like my thyroid function, or not the function, the outcome of the function from the previous things, from looking at a top down. I damaged my body in that way because of severe restrictions of calories, because of severe stress from overtraining, because of severe mental stress from worrying about what people look like. Add this to the history that I've been through with trauma as a child and as a teenager. And don't underestimate trauma. Trauma isn't just when we've been through what people class as severe levels of trauma. I'm not understating when people have been through things like sexual abuse, or they've been through wars and there's severe trauma there and PTSD there. Trauma is based on the individual and based on the perception. So don't understate, if you've been through a highly stressful time, that you might have had some symptoms of trauma show up in your body that we have to deal with now based on the stress. So if you are looking at your thyroid and thinking, why am I getting these thyroid symptoms? Why am I getting so frustrated? Why is this medication not working? Or why am I taking T4 and this T4 is actually making me feel worse? Then we need to look a little bit deeper. And we look at things like your circadian rhythm. We look at your cortisol levels. We look deeper on blood tests. We will look into your blood glucose management, because if you've got poor blood glucose management and you're not able to keep that steady, we're going to signal cortisol and we're going to have problems with insulin. We have problems with that, then we're not going to be able to get the nutrients into the cells, and we're going to cause more stress, which again is going to impact your hypothalamus. If your hypothalamus is impacted, your pituitary gets impacted. And then we go through the adrenals, we go through the gonads, we go through the thyroid, whatever axis that we have, in this case, the HPT axis, we are going to see issues. Then with the toxin exposure, not only does it have those direct impacts, what about if someone is a heavy drinker? Well, they have a history of heavy drinking and their liver has literally been processing so much stuff, or their kidneys have been filtering so much stuff, that we have issues there. And their liver function is low. What about if they're not drinking much water? What about if there's loads of processed foods in the diet? The thyroid is the outcome for most people. So if you are having issues there, look at this other stuff. Drop me a message. One place I would suggest to do is go to my Brain Fog Blitz course, 21-day Brain Fog Blitz. That's at ojayhealth.com/brain fog blitz. Now, this is 17 videos and some PDF accomplishments, but the things that I talk about in there, talking about foods to add in, foods to take out, talking about your vagus nerve, talking about morning routine, evening routine, how to optimize your sleep, supplements. It may not directly think that it's linked with the thyroid, but it absolutely is. And I would suggest for people to start at that place, go through the course, drop me a message afterwards. I'm pretty certain you will start to see some improvements. But if you do want to talk one-to-one, as I said, go to ojhealth.com, go to the contact slide, or come into my DMs and drop me a message. We can book in a time to have a proper chat. Hopefully this has helped. And I get the frustration. I absolutely get it. So please don't hesitate to message. Take care.